Hey guys, we're back at the bamboo forest. I'm also wearing black today, so you guys don't think I'm holy or anything. Before we dive in, I want to thank everybody who commented on the last video. To be honest, it was a bit unexpected to see all of you guys engaging so much, and there was a lot of great questions as well. And one of them was, how do I practice semen retention without depriving my wife, basically? And that's what I'll break down today. So there seemed to be a bit of confusion around semen retention and practicing sex. Some people even thought that those two cannot even go together, which is, I've never heard that before. It's completely wrong. The definition of semen retention is just that. You're retaining semen under whatever circumstances that may be. So yes, you can definitely have sex and practice semen retention. I mean, it's like saying, imagine somebody's been doing semen retention for years and then he gets into a relationship. Does that mean he has to give up his semen retention and start ejaculating every day? It would be absurd. Or even worse, like he would have to deny sex to his wife because he's practicing semen retention. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? But there is a difference between somebody who's single and somebody who's married, right? And so I'll make that distinction today in the approach. Like the approach changes depending on which stage of your life you're in. Like a lot of and I understand, a lot of the people who learn about semen retention, they got there through the NoFap community. And in that context, semen retention does often imply celibacy because there's a strong focus on quitting porn, no masturbation, all of these things. So that, in that sense, it completely makes sense. And especially for a single man, right? Where the goal is to overcome lust first and foremost. But then once you get married, that goal changes. So here's the framework. Single men practice semen retention to overcome lust. I know there's many other reasons, but first and foremost, for the sake of simplicity, single men practice semen retention to overcome lust. Married men practice semen retention to cultivate love. Same practice, very different goals. And here's why that matters, right? We can't love until we've overcome lust. Not to say that there's going to be a day where you can claim I've overcome lust. I think it's a lifelong battle, right? But that's the progression. We have to deal with lust first before we can open ourselves and be able to love. That's the progression. And so whether you're religious or not, maybe you can see where this idea comes from of like no sex before marriage, right? Because there's a logical progression of things. Being single means war, basically. It's a time to discipline the body, not to kill our desire, but to redirect it. And in that process, what happens is you're training the body to be hungry for God by removing all the substitutes. That's what the discipline is for. And we learn how to choose him before her, meaning your future wife in this case. And that's the foundation. That's the foundation for marriage or a healthy relationship. Now, marriage is a whole different ballgame. So it's not war anymore, it's worship. It's not discipline, it's devotion. It's not destruction, it's creation. It's not disconnection, it's connection. And you're no longer fighting against lust, or at least you're no longer focusing on fighting lust. You're focusing on cultivating love. Sex without release cultivates connection, right? So in the context of marriage, semen retention then becomes a practice of, or an act of devotion to your wife and to God. Now, does that mean you can never release with your wife? in my opinion, no, that's not what it means. Release can still happen, in my opinion, but this time it's from choice, not compulsion, and that's a very big difference. To me, that's not a compromise, that's a sacrifice. You use the practice of semen retention to build intimacy together, to be more connected, not less connected. And so you're not depriving your wife by any means. You're actually building intimacy together. And so if you explain it like this to your wife, if she's, a little bit resistant to your crazy ideas, explain it to her that this is about establishing connection more by bringing more presence. And as a man, in this case, you're not chasing your own release. You're actually focusing on building something together. And like I said before, semen retention is a practice. It's not a rule. So it's completely up to you to decide when to ejaculate, if to ejaculate, never, sometimes, a lot. I think that's completely up to you and your wife, obviously. Now, when you do release with your wife, it's not the same as masturbation. The energy loss, what I mean by this is the energy loss is not the same. First and foremost, because there's a lot more oxytocin involved when you have sex versus when you're masturbating. And what the oxytocin does is that it kind of buffers the dopamine crash afterwards. But it goes much deeper than that. If you have sex, you become, in a way, one body with your wife. And so you establish a closed system. And if you orgasm in a loving relationship, in a loving marriage, and it feels aligned in that moment, which is something that you learn to discern whether release is aligned or it's not aligned. When it's aligned, the energy loss is, you'll notice it's much, much less than usual. Because the energy you release, it's a choice, not compulsion. So you fully release, you let it go. And because you're so connected and in alignment, the energy has the capacity to come back to you in a different form. That's my experience, at least. So masturbation drains you, but this kind of relationship can renew you, even if you release. So to answer the question, can we practice semen retention and keep our wife happy? Yes, absolutely you can. There is even a word for this type of slow sex, which is careza, where the focus is more on cultivating intimacy rather than climax. And so you're learning how to enjoy the journey instead of rushing to the destination. You're choosing presence over performance. And so you're not depriving your wife by any means, because you're using semen retention to cultivate more connection, not less, by being fully present and fully devoted. Now, if your partner is South American, like mine, you might have to compromise once in a while. And personally, I think that's completely fine. Just treat it as a special occasion. And now you know that, at least I can tell from my experience, now you know that the energy loss is not that bad as long as it's happening in a loving relationship. You're choosing to ejaculate, not from choice, not from compulsion, and it feels aligned. That's a whole different dynamic than ejaculating while masturbating. So, to recap, practicing semen retention as a single man, war. Practicing semen retention as a married man, worship. First, you're fighting demons. Second, you're fighting your wife. So, discipline, devotion. All right, I hope that answered some of you guys' questions. If you want more details, I'm happy to answer. Drop a comment and I'm happy to answer and go into more detail. I will be doing these YouTube videos every week, but if you want daily updates and a bit more personal stuff, I also have an Instagram and a Twitter. They're still fresh because my Instagram account, after 8 years, unfortunately, got deleted by Instagram. for going against community guidelines. That's the cost of being a sex educator, I guess. But luckily I found YouTube, and apparently this is where the party's at. So also, there is a free training in the description or in the bio about overcoming lust without killing our desire. So if you haven't signed up yet, you can. It's completely free. Other than that, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.